Well, good morning. I am a water engineer, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night. But to follow on the governor and the admiral's comments, we need more water engineers. I agree totally. One of the important things about an engineer is actually public safety, and I want to echo Chris Daggett's comment that lives were lost in Hurricane Sandy. That is our ultimate goal, is to reduce or eliminate lost lives and suffering in all of this. So that sort of surrounds everything I'm going to say. We've had 11 presidential disaster declarations in 8 years. Sandy's just the latest one. We have had reminder after reminder after reminder, and here we are, we're still talking about, well, what do we need to do? 11 presidential disaster declarations. And what does that mean? As has been discussed previously, that means it's too big for local government. That means it's too big for state government. That means we need to raise our hands and ask the federal government to come in and help us. 11 times in 8 years, all related to flooding. Those are the flood presidential disaster declarations. What you're seeing behind me here is I took 2 days with David Conrad. David Conrad was on Capitol Hill for 30-some years, and we drove down the coast of New Jersey. We started in Hoboken, and we worked our way to Atlantic City, 450 miles in 2 days. And it was an amazing experience. David has seen the Midwest flooding in the 90s. He saw the Katrina damage in the 2000s in multiple states. And what was interesting driving back from 2 days with David and saying, what is so different, or what's the same and what's different with the Sandy damage? And he says, you know, there's nothing that we saw in the last 2 days that I haven't seen before. I mean, destruction of homes, businesses, infrastructure, and certainly deaths. But what was so different was the density of the state. The state of New Jersey now is number 3. This is not where we want to be, but we're number 3 in NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program, dollars paid out, claims since 1978 to today. We don't want to be in third place. And in fact, we're less than $200 million away from second place, and that's the state of Texas. Before some of the recent events, we were the number 1 state out of the Gulf Coast. We're worse than that at this point. That's a really bad statistic to have. And we have this little state of New Jersey, and gosh, we are number 3 in the nation. We had local governments not prepared for Hurricane Sandy. Again, we had 10 presidential disaster declarations statewide, or in parts of the state of New Jersey in the last 8 years. Locals weren't ready. We heard at our conference, NJAFM's conference a few weeks ago, that code officials weren't ready for this. They didn't have the equipment, the safety equipment. They didn't have the training, the staffing to handle what Sandy brought. Local officials, as communities participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, there are certain things that you must do to participate in that program. A lot of towns did not know that they had to issue substantial damage determinations. That term didn't mean anything to many communities. FEMA actually had to hire a contractor to do this at a later date. We heard some areas of North Jersey saying, well, why am I getting the substantial damage letter at this late date? I've already worked on my home. So that creates real issues. None of the flood insurance rate maps, and there's a lot of them ready to come out in their preliminary form in the next couple months, but none of them account for sea level rise. None of them. None of the advisory-based flood elevation maps accounted for sea level rise. What we have now, the preliminary work maps, no sea level rise in those, and again, the preliminary mapping coming out very shortly does not account for sea level rise. Bigger Waters 2012 has a step in the right direction in that it's looking at incorporating future conditions in some of the mapping. But remember, Flood insurance rate maps are a flood insurance product. It's something that's used to rate your flood insurance. We're using these maps now to do everything from land use to emergency management and other things. We need to rethink these mapping. And what does that mapping product mean? We're starting to add in risk map products, different things, inundation. But again, it's a flood insurance rate map. Sandy was too big for the municipalities in New Jersey. It just is too big. Natural disasters are big for municipalities, and when we have so many small municipalities in a state, it's overwhelming. As already said here many times this morning, we need a regional coordination. We need a regional effort in dealing with a natural disaster such as Sandy. There's been a lot of discussion. The papers have been covering it well. Bigger Waters 2012 has certainly had its detractors, and even the waters of Bigger Waters said, I didn't know what I was doing. I sort of didn't know how this would turn out. Today or tomorrow, there will be bills dropped in Washington from the House and the Senate sides that will, and we'll see where they go, but they will put a delay of 4 years to Bigger Waters. One thing we're seeing in Bigger Waters in New Jersey, while again, it's too fast and too much, it's too much too fast, I should say, is that Bigger Waters has encouraged mitigation. People are doing things so that they have less risk, that they have less vulnerability in times ahead. So I've actually worked with the Senator's office in getting something on the flood insurance bill that says, look, you're paying this much, but here's how much your risk is. Here's a monetization of your risk. This is what you would be paying without these subsidies. That needs to be included on these bills. It's vitally important that people understand that they are paying less than their risk. We've seen a lot of interest in the community rating system since Sandy. That's a really big plus. We've been seeing communities saying, look, you know, for reasons of lowering flood insurance, but it's also for reasons of, hey, we want to get safer, we want to be more resilient towards storms. And the community rating system is really the discount driver program of the flood insurance, the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. It's a really valuable program. We are still undersubscribed in that program in New Jersey. It's something that we really need to push. I believe there's 62 or so towns in that. We need to have hundreds in that program. We're now a case study. I mean, we're a year later now. The concrete's really starting to harden. We can't carve our initials in it anymore. When I looked 3 months after Sandy, I said, what's going to happen here? The tension between building back, getting back on our feet, returning to normal versus preparing for the future. There have been definitely some pluses. There have been definitely some opportunities not championed. So some of these small changes, each one of these events we have does change things. It changes policy. Our organization has to keep going out and saying the same thing over and over, but it's useful because it does make change. And floodplain management, and this session was also to talk about the economy. Good floodplain management means prosperous local and state economies into the future. There's just absolutely no doubt about that. And I want to finish with the thought that we really don't have a flood problem. We have a land use problem. That's exactly what we're dealing with. And I thank you very much.